Let me ask you a question. What do you think about when you hear the name Sega? Do you think about their old video game consoles? Do you just think exclusively Sonic the Hedgehog? Do you think about their relationship with Nintendo? Do you even think they have or had any particular qualities compared to Nintendo or Sony? As someone who grew up with both of them, my memories with Sega were practically non-existent. The closest I've ever come to growing up with anything related to Sega was with Kirby's Avalanche on the Super Nintendo. But the game that it was based on wasn't even a Sega property at the time, so I don't think that really counts. Past that, my true start with Sega was with, if you can believe it, a Super Monkey Ball LCD toy from McDonald's back in 2003. I thought it was Sonic Advance 3 for the longest time, but it was actually a bit sooner than I thought. Shoutouts to the mad lad who actually recreated those for the Sonic Amateur Gaming Expo. Also, check out some of those games, they have actually been pretty fun this year. Going back to that, I don't have the toy anymore. We must have donated it off before the first move. But it did get me a little bit interested in the series. Not much, not only because I didn't really know what a Monkey Ball was, but I wouldn't even get a game until I got a job nearly 15 years later. It's really interesting how a lot of people don't really think about Sega outside of Sonic the Hedgehog or Yakuza nowadays. But you gotta remember that that was a big reason Sega was Nintendo's biggest competitor back in the 90s. At least before Sony strangled their console business anyway. Their entire library was the reason people wanted a Sega Genesis, and in hindsight, one of the reasons the Dreamcast is considered a hidden gem of the console space. Not the Saturn though. That completely fizzled in the West. But even that had its fair share of debuts, Nights into Dreams being Sonic Team's next big franchise on the console. And Panzer Dragoon was actually a good launch title for our Sega console for once. Well, that's more of a jab towards the Genesis and the Master System, not so much the Dreamcast. You get me. We could go on and on about how many brilliant franchises Sega popped out throughout the 90s, and even bleeding into the 2000s. You probably know Sonic, Knights, Monkey Ball, and Yakuza. But the thing is, back when they were new, the West were none the wiser, excluding Sonic obviously. It wasn't until Sega went multi-platform where people started to pay attention. Though some franchises still had some trouble getting a following, mostly because a lot of them didn't migrate to the other platforms until several years later. But what if I told you that there was a perfect way to get these franchises recognized? If Smash Bros. Has taught us anything, a good crossover can get anyone interested in any property. And Sega did their best to create the perfect matchup for their big library of franchises. Thing is, they kind of started a little rough. Remember when I mentioned the fact that a good chunk of their franchises never left Japan? This is Segagaga, a role-playing game for the Dreamcast, mostly known for its style? It's a quirky little title, you can't deny that. The main appeal of the game was to fight and meet other Sega characters, which would technically qualify as a crossover by proxy. I was going to play it on my actual Dreamcast, it would have gave this stupid disc some worth. But that wasn't exactly happening. Like, it's not the worst I've seen, but it's a little too much money for me, especially for something I wasn't going to understand. So I had to emulate it. And boy, I should have bit the bullet. I'm going to blame this on the file, but the text just kinda had a day off, I guess, making things just a wee bit more difficult than usual. So with this handicap, how long did Jayson last in this RPG? Not far. I was going through pretty well, not like I was understanding anything from the NPCs. I figured out how to pick my locations, how to attack, use items, which I'm not sure of the quantity in hand, and whatever the bleeding hell this is. A quiz? A puzzle? A matching game? I don't know. I'm more confused than I was expecting. Though, then again, if there was text, I don't think it would have been any more effective. Can I question the enemies, though? I have no idea what these designs are. You have a couple of overweight nerds, you have a walking speech bubble, the developers, I want to take a wild guess, and with the NPCs you have Red Pepsi Man, a pixelated woman, not like that, a guy in a monkey suit. I'm not sure what is happening, but I'm still oddly fixated on the lack of legible anything to really pay attention. Is that supposed to be a person, or are those clothes? Oh, I just realized there's a run button. You know, this actually makes this kind of goofy. Okay, I can't seem to go any farther. I talked to my partner, or my rival, or whoever they are, and I can't seem to get to her, and I've talked to every NPC afterwards, so, I guess I'll leave the building and... Oh, shit, I didn't mean to talk about VMUs. No, please let me go. You scare me with your lack of lip movements, even though it's very clear that people actually move their lips. Please stop doing your ventriloquist act, for the love of God. Oh, I think I found the shop, but why is there a hammer? Are you the anime version of Annie Wilkes? Anime Wilkes. Okay, that was an experience. I wish I could experience more. This game absolutely fascinates me. But this became unplayable really fast. I would love to play more if this got an actual translation. Maybe I could play it on my Twitch for the hell of it. But at the moment, I am at my limit, both physically and emotionally. Okay, let's actually get to the stuff people would know, though I doubt most people would give a shit about this one. Sega Superstars for the EyeToy.
What do you mean you don't remember the EyeToy?
If you don't know what I'm talking about, think of the Kinect, by a different company, 6 years earlier, with a low-quality camera and really bad tracking quality. But just like the Kinect, it lacked the proper audience to justify the purchase, and thankfully, it wasn't exactly expensive thanks to not being in high demand. With that said, Sega Superstars is a minigame collection, containing 12 minigames of varying quality, none of which being worth buying this stupid piece of plastic. First off, I need to get the ring light just to get the camera to recognize me, because this thing can't track light for the life of it. And I had to find the best place for the EyeToy because this thing was not made with flat screens in mind. And once I got it working, I get Mike Wazowski for the majority of the setup. Now let's start with Samba de Amigo, which, spoiler alert, was one of the best parts of the package. Just hit the rings to the B, and this was actually really responsive. Unlike the Space Channel 5 game, which sucked. Choo Choo Rocket was kinda neat, getting the Choo Choos into the rocket while trapping the Kapu Kapu while they're on the bridges. Shave My Arms completely hate it though, and this goes for the Billy Hatcher game as well. It's a fun use for the tech, but I'm holding my arms up for the entire time. It kinda hurts. The Puyo Pop Fever game was a bit of fun though, guiding the Puyos into the respective doors while not getting the bombs into them, though I swear it doesn't really work. Virtua Fighter and House of the Dead would have probably been a lot more fun, but with how small this room is, my large-ass hitbox kinda broke them into pieces. Oh, kiss my ass, you were right in the way of my arm, that's your dumbass fault. Sonic Knights and Monkey Ball, on the other hand, these were the worst of the bunch. Moving the landscape in the Monkey Ball game is not exactly as fun as using a controller. Knights just does whatever the hell he wants. And the special stage is even worse than it was in Sonic Heroes. Never thought that was possible, honestly, but thank you, EyeToy, for showing me the endless possibilities. Oh god, never mind, the Crazy Taxi game takes the brown trophy. It's the only game to take advantage of the microphone, and as you can probably deduce, it doesn't work very much at all. And lastly, we have the Chow Garden, everyone's favorite waste of time. Yeah, safe to say I didn't care for this one, so we get to move on. The idea of a minigame collection featuring several franchises isn't a terrible one, but it's not very compelling, especially for a gimmicky camera device. And even the best this game has to offer can be found elsewhere, so really, what's the point of satiating a curiosity of any kind? The answer? Practically none. Maybe I'll go back to look at the rest of the EyeToy library. It's not like any of it is going to break my bank account. But I'm not really in the mood to do it ever, to be frank. So don't hold your breath. Oh, shoot, I just realized I missed one. Virtua Soccer. Fantastic! Yep, this is certainly soccer, I guess. How the hell did that happen?
You wanna know what else involves smacking balls around? Run.
Here's a small tidbit for you. I actually played tennis when I was in high school. I thought it looked fun and learned quickly that I had the upper body strength of a lemur. I still have that same tennis racket if I ever decided to try it again, though considering I know nobody who cares and I haven't really practiced in, well, over a decade at this point, that's probably not going to be likely. So I guess I have to use video games to fill that hole in some way. Not to say I've ever touched Mario Tennis, but I did play Wii Sports Tennis, and I mean, it's fine, not one of the better games on that collection, honestly. But I did get Sega Superstar Tennis on the Wii just because Sonic was on the cover and my parents thought I'd enjoy it. I think I got the game when I was around 13 or 14, but when I did get it, man, I played a lot of it. This was the game that made me look into the rest of Sega's catalog, though I was still familiar with a couple of franchises like I said earlier, with Super Monkey Ball and Puyo Puyo, or at least the Puyo Puyo that was skinned and replaced with a demonic bosom. But the rest? Not a clue. But I was interested in stuff like Jet Set Radio, Samba de Amigo, Golden Axe, not Alex Kidd because he looked like death, But before I get into the rest of the blatant fan service, I should talk about the game itself because it'll be less interesting than talking about how Choo Choo Rocket was made to piss you off. So you select if you want to play with friends if applicable, pick a character you don't know, pick Green Hill Zone because everyone loves Green Hill Zone, and then you serve the ball. Hit the serve at full power, chances are the computer player will freeze, take advantage of that when you can because I certainly did. And if they don't get distracted by their inner demons, you will actually get to play a game of tennis. Certain button combinations will do different shots, my favorite being the lob because, again, the computer player is as intelligent as a goldfish. And if you hit the ball enough times, you can get the ability to cheat. Manipulate the ball, teleport your opponent, electrocute your opponent, or graffiti the opponent's side of the court to make them slip. Actually, how does that work?
And on the offset, that doesn't really sound interesting. I mean, yeah, it's only fun for a couple of rounds, like any sports game. What makes this one interesting, though, is with its single-player content. I just love twirling this around.
The amount of content Sumo Digital stuffed into this mode is so amazing. Starting with the characters, you start off with the franchises you can pretty much expect. Monkey Ball, Knights, Jet Set Radio, Space Channel 5, Samba de Amigo, and Egg. But when you start filling it out, it doesn't really get that more exciting. Most of the roster is just doubling each franchise roster, except for Amigo. Poor dude. And I really don't like how Sonic clogs a third of the roster itself. I get that he's the mascot and he's Sega's moneymaker, but in my opinion, a good crossover should give every franchise equal or close to equal representation. It's why the Super Smash Bros. Rosters are a plague. Why must a fourth of the roster be nothing but Mario and Pokemon? But hey, instead of getting a second Amigo character, you get a failed mascot, and instead of getting the sixth Sonic character, thank God, you get Gilius from Golden Axe, which is a very welcome addition, though I'm pretty sure he was only added since Beast Rider was coming out later that year. Which is a shame, because that wasn't very good. Also, both of those franchises have nothing but those one character, but at least the other franchises pick up the slack. Well, actually, Afterburner and Outrun have a court each, Space Channel 5 and Knights only have an extra character and one stage. Amigo only has one stage, which is absolutely depressing, and Phantasy Star gets jack shit as always. Actually, Billy Hatcher also got shafted, but really nobody likes Billy, so fuck him. On the side of the minigames, man, they're lovely. Okay, not all of them. Collecting rings is about as riveting as collecting rings, and Virtual Squad is a little too easy with the pointer controls, but it can also lock you into getting shot twice if you miss an aim at the wrong time. That's not annoying at all, but everything else is pretty solid stuff. Monkey Ball has you hitting capsules into portals, even has you playing a game of monkey billiards. That's actually pretty cool. Jet Set Radio has you filling in graffiti and beating your friend down off the net. Choo Choo Rocket has you hitting the arrows to guide the Choo Choos and kill the Kapu Kapu, even though the auto-aim can screw you over in several missions. I absolutely love the Space Harrier missions, since it has you aiming at the enemies for a high score, which is interesting because I don't really like Space Harrier that much. Curia Mansion was also a fun one, since it has you bashing any zombies using power-ups, which is, again, interesting because I don't like House of the Dead. Oh, okay, sweet dreams, Knights. See you next game, if there ever is one. And Puyo Puyo has you popping Puyos that's to be expected, and after learning that this was an actual series and not a Kirby spin-off, I went to an emulator, played some of the games, and became more addicted than any rational person should be. What really irks me about the Wii version though, is that you change controller setups a lot. Like, most of them require you to have the Wiimote on its side, which, okay, fine, I kinda prefer having the nunchuck with it, but fine, whatever. And then there are a couple that just require you to have the Wii Remote without the nunchuck, and that's just obnoxious. Can I just have the option to just have the Wii Remote and nunchuck? That's all I ask. You can definitely see Sumo Digital put a lot of love into something that was clearly meant to be a Mario Tennis clone and not really much else. And while the gameplay isn't the greatest thing out there, I'd say it's at its best with the single player. Only sour point is the roster, like I said, which is, at best, the most basic it can be. It's super obvious that they reused rigs for extra characters. That may explain the overabundance of Sonic characters, I guess. But I wish they could have added a few more franchises to beef up the variety, like Ristar, Sakura, Axel, or Blaze. And hell, they got Puyo Pop Fever, why not have Arl or Amity? Or preferably both, I'm greedy. It's just a sea of missed opportunity, even if it's nothing more than a cash grab for Sega. Another issue in hindsight was the lack of online functionality, and that goes for all versions, not just the Wii version. It's just kind of odd to have a multiplayer game in 2008 without putting some kind of online lobby for the people who don't really have friends to play with. At least they changed that for the racing games later on, so that's a plus. Before we move on to that, I would like to take a look at the DS version for a moment, because I was curious as to how different it was. Okay, I really like how they reused that sprite. That's actually pretty clever. I was extremely concerned because, Amigo, please move for me, honey. I was not sure what was going on until I realized what kind of console I was playing. And yes, it has touch controls. And yes, I had to use the touchscreen while putting a finger on the trigger for the superstar moves. Clearly, Masahiro Sakurai took inspiration for Kid Icarus Uprising. But instead of getting a witty space shooter, I get a below acceptable tennis game on the DS.
What a nightmare!
Yeah, you got that right. And then I learned that I could actually change the controls. Well, I guess I can give it another shot. I mean, it's better, but not really something I want to be playing on my 3DS. The only differences I managed to see were the Sonic minigames were in Green Hill with only one attack robot. And the Space Area minigame looked like it was ripped straight out of that game, which was actually kind of nice, not gonna lie. Okay, let's get to the cars.
And it took them their sweet-ass time. Mario's been doing this since 1992, and while you can count the Sonic Drift games as Sonic's first foray into the racing genre, I wouldn't. Thankfully, I can say that these games are a little more exciting than what the Drift games tried to emulate.
I remember seeing this game on the Walmart shelves back in 2010, the Xbox 360 version to be exact, because I saw a certain face on the cover, and that dude also had top billing. Shame I never got a 360 for almost a decade, so I eventually settled with the PC version and hoped my boy would get modded in. And no, I've never bothered getting the 360 version, not really a reason to own it, plus my 360 has been dying for about a year now. Fuck my life, right? So I got a confession to make. I'm not a huge fan of kart racers. I've tried plenty of them, from most Mario Karts, Crash Team Racing, Pac-Man World Rally, M&M's Kart Racing. Most of them just don't tickle my fancy. Maybe I just need more time with the genre. Not that one, though. That thing can burn in a fire. Out of all of them, I only really enjoyed 3. Sonic Riders, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed. So with all that said, you may expect me to say I don't like the first All-Stars Racing that much. Well, I do enjoy it fine. I'd say it's number 4 or 5 on my racing game totem pole. My favorite part of it being how drift heavy the mechanics are, and it's really smooth to control as a result. There's also a trick mechanic that I've never used because I didn't know it was a thing, but I won stuff without it, so it's negligible. Otherwise, it's rather basic, and they repeat a lot of track themes, really noticeable when you're playing the tourneys in the mission mode. Each theme pretty much gets reused 3 times each. Seaside Hill, Casino Park, Final Fortress, Carnival Town, Kurian Mansion, Tokyoto, Blizzard Castle. Actually, no, Blizzard Castle only gets 2 with the Dino Mountain stage for Billy Hatcher. But, 2 is still a little too much. At least the Super Monkey Ball tracks are different enough, but even if they break them down, that's only 8 series reps and 11 unique level themes. And no surprise, Sonic takes up 3 of them. Greedy little bitch. Same goes for the character selection. 8 of those motherfuckers out of 21. 24 if you're including exclusive characters. Though, really, who counts the Mies and avatars? I don't. None of the rest got more than 1 rep. Maybe Gumming Pudding got the axe, while Knights got both of his reps from the last game cut. Though Knights was relegated to a flag bitch, so that's nice. Look man, I know you're going to tap at the title saying that it's a Sonic game with other franchises as guests or something of that sort. That's just a marketing thing to sell units. I almost guarantee that. Though with that said, damn, this roster is kinda cool. You got the obvious contenders, like BD Joe from Crazy Taxi, Ryo from Shenmue, and the series reps from Tennis aside from Gilius, who was actually going to get in, but got cut for complications with his vehicle. Alice Kid in a motorcycle is weird as hell, though. I can't say there's a character that looks less fitting in a... What the hell is this? Okay, disregard any issues I have with the Sonic cast. This is the best thing I've ever seen in my life. And of course Shadow is in one too, but if that's all it takes to make him stand out from Sonic, so be it, even if it is a Shadow the Hedgehog reference. Ugh. But frickin' hell, the deep cuts here are just... mwah! You got Billy Hatcher, of course, Opa Opa from Fantasy Zone, Mobo and Robo from Biznanza Brothers, Zobio and Zobiko from the Japanese-only arcade game loving Deads, The House of the Dead EX, That is a fucking mouthful. And the choo-choos from Choo Choo Rocket, which the series itself isn't a deep cut, but the characters themselves only appeared in the manual for that game. That is absolutely brilliant. Wait, Chewbie's mouth is a unique? Okay, whoever made this wiki must have been fucking drunk off their mind. And the fact that the Xbox version had Banjo and Kazooie as a guest character was absolutely wonderful. That alone made me want to get an Xbox 360 at the time. The PlayStation 3 didn't get jack shit though. That was fucking hilarious. And there was more by the looks of it, with Gilius, Vice from Skies of Arcadia, and Knife from Phantasy Star being close to coming in, with Tom Tom from Wonder Boy, Toe Jam and Earl, as well as Sagata Sanshiro being cut due to rights issues. This game was so close to pure perfection, damn it! But even with all that, not a single Puyo Puyo cameo. That just makes the game worse than Tennis by default. Though I'd say the game, like Superstar Tennis, is only at its best with the single player in mind. I've never thought about playing this game with other people, just for the sheer fact that Transformed was there since I got the game, and spoiler alert, it is the better game in terms of mechanics. But the mission mode still gives this game some present day value, with some battle modes, drift and boosting challenges, bonanza bombing missions, elimination rounds, 2 boss battles, one of which makes no sense whatsoever, while the other is an anticlimactic final mission. Okay, I never said it was perfect. And the charm this game gives off makes the game more memorable, with the deep cut characters, and the announcer being a source of charisma makes the races pretty fun as well.
Well, isn't this a quiet one? Wake me up when you guys start driving for real, huh? The winner is Amigo! Hey, Jimmy Monkey, you're my number one, too. Shadow, get out of the way, quick! Billy Hatcher snatches the lead! What a race! Whew. We'll be right back with more terrific tarmac action. Don't go away.
God, that man's energy is infectious.
Kid outclasses the competition to take first place.
My dude, do you not remember the 80s? You know, I do kind of wish Transform kind of got that treatment. The announcer isn't as enthusiastic. In fact, he sounds a little bit automated. No joke, the only time he's funny is when you're messing with the voice slider.
Don't do this to me! This is my only job! No!
Oh, speaking of layoffs, the character roster... Man, this feels a bit underwhelming. I wouldn't say it's worse, but they removed most of the really interesting characters. No Bonanza Brothers, no Zombie Couple, no Choo Choos, no Billy. Don't really miss him much. And no Banjo. That was the big casualty. Not even Big came back with his motorcycle. He was the best part of the Sonic roster. But, oh well. They also could have cut a few more, but I'll stop before I get a more hate mail. At least Vice, Gilius, and Knights finally made it. In the most disturbing way they could. Actually, with Knights in the game, who's the flag bearer now? Well, that's about as much Rice Star as Sega's ever gonna reference outside of a ROM, so I guess I gotta take that. We also got Gum, Pudding, and Mibi returning from Tennis. We got Joe Musashi from Shinobi, which was a welcome surprise. Shogun and Wilmus from Total War. General Winters from Company of Heroes. Never even heard of that series. There's a Dreamcast controller that transforms into a Daytona USA car. There's the kind of crazy I like to get down with. And... Football Manager? I know that's Sega, but that's probably the biggest curveball. And we got some interesting third-party picks, such as Pyro, Heavy, and Spy from Team Fortress 2. A little bit of a weird pick, but I can never complain. I like TF2. There's Wreck-It Ralph, which was a good tie-in crossover for the film, since Sonic was one of the more prominent secondary characters. Okay, maybe secondary is a bit of a stretch. And Danica Patrick, a real-life NASCAR racer. I don't care for NASCAR, and I don't care about this inclusion. Oh, there was also Charity DLC where you could play as Yodcast. If that weren't for Charity, I'd care so much less than I already do, and I already care very little as is. As for the track selection, we got 5 Sonic tracks. I've grown numb up to this point. But at least Jet Set Radio and Samba de Amigo got 2 tracks each. And you also got the Dragon Canyon from Panzer Dragoon, Chili Castle from Billy Hatcher, the Burning Depths from Burning Rangers, there's the deep cut, and the Carrier Zone from Afterburner Climax, plus many other great tracks representing the Sega racers. One of my all-time favorites being Rogue's Landing from Skies of Arcadia. where it takes full advantage of the game's main gimmick, with the actual war zone completely decimating the landscape while you're driving. That transform part of the title references what may be the greatest pitch to any racing game, as your car has the ability to transform into a boat or a plane depending on the track's layout. Not only is the transformation seamless, but doing tricks will actually give you a bit of boost, which by the way, thank God that's on a dedicated command with the right stick. A little out of the way, but it's manageable. None of the forms feel all that clunky. They have their own advantages in physics, but still feel natural, especially with the right character tailor-made for you or the track. Though the boat can be a little whack at times, makes those boost challenges a bit annoying on S-Rank. And say you want to play as a specific character, but want the specific stats to complement your playstyle. Well, you can unlock separate mods by leveling up that character. Sure, you gotta play as the character for a while, and maybe you'll get used to them before getting that mod you want, but that may also get you to learn about the character, which is exactly what a crossover should do. Though I wish unlocking characters was just as simple as the last game. Instead of having a shop, you gotta unlock the characters by going through the career mode, and hopefully have the right amount of stars to unlock them. I don't like this personally. I'm perfectly fine perfecting the challenge given, but for the people who just want to fill up the roster, it feels limiting to that kind of crowd. The shop system was way more player friendly in that regard. But no, you play the single player for unlockables and the multiplayer for the rest. Though I don't know if this is still being played or if Team Sonic Racing took the spotlight. I hope not, considering that game was a disappointment in comparison. Though I would certainly play it over the handheld versions any day. I wish I had more to say about them, but both of these games were cramp-inducing. The fact that they have the acceleration on the A button of all things makes the game absolutely unbearable for more than 15 minutes. And I have even less to say about Transform 3DS. Like, that game doesn't even have the luxury of 60 frames per second like the DS game, which is actually pretty weird considering that this is a generation higher. Though I will give them one compliment. The fact that I can see the stats and Eggman is faster than Sonic in anything is absolutely brilliant. A wonderful reference to the best Sonic game. No, I am not arguing about this. Also, why is Zobio one of the fastest characters? Aren't the zombies supposed to be slow as shit?
And that's it. Kind of. I mean, there was a mobile game called Sega Heroes back in 2018, but that got discontinued a few years later, so not something I can cover. And there was a Japanese-only golf game on the PC. That also got discontinued a few years later, as far as I got from my research. Man, what a legacy.
As for the future of the Sega Superstars series, that's kind of hard to say. Sumo Digital was too busy making the new racing game featuring only the Sonic cast. And while it isn't bad, it's just not as rich as Transformed in my opinion. And I think Sega is just more interested in getting their franchises out the door rather than just making a dedicated crossover. And to be fair, they're doing a fair job. While Sonic and Yakuza seem to be their major priority, they've made great strides in getting their other IPs out to the public. Most of the games they've been getting out were pretty solid, like Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania being an excellent throwback. Puyo Puyo has been getting some love, especially with that Genesis Mini 2. Space Channel 5 is doing great on VR from what I've heard. And they've even given their properties to other devs without even wanting to publish them, like Streets of Rage 4 and Wonder Boy and Monster World. Even Sakura Wars and Alex fucking Kidd got new games, so who knows what they'll bring back for the dead. And hey, hopefully we see another neat crossover in the future, and whatever that may entail, I do hope that they go a little over the top with the fan service. They have way too many franchises to not go crazy with. Just make our all-playable character. I'm not asking for much.
What characters do you want to see? What franchises do you want to see represented? And what would you like to see in a crossover? Personally, I would like to see them try to replicate the golf idea again. That would be really interesting. A fighting game would be very interesting. Not like Smash Brothers. I would kind of like to see something like Capcom versus Marvel. Marvel versus Capcom. That's what it's called. And personally, I just want more Puyo Puyo characters. I mean, Sega Tennis kind of did something with that, but no, they don't really do much with that series. Even though nowadays, that franchise is actually getting a lot more recognition, which is great for me because I love Puyo Puyo. Okay, I gotta get this one out of my system. What do you guys want to see a Puyo Puyo collection in the future? Like, I'm probably the only person who would ever want to see that, but there are just so many great Puyo Puyo games, and man, Puyo Puyo Sun is really interesting. Puyo Puyo 4, That's getting translated really soon. I also